the other part of that is letting them know, hey, these are jobs in the future. Someone's going to have to be the programmer of AI.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be able to pull all the information itself. Someone's going to have to be able to check it. And so again, the level of exposure and explaining those type of things to say you can't depend on it 100%. You still have to use some other I want to say reputable, resources to double check the information that you're getting. So parents, that's what they want to hear. They want to make sure that their child is learning, or they can't just type everything in. It's not like a calculator. You're going to type the numbers, it's going to give you the answers. This requires a little bit more thinking, as we know, and making sure we continue to highlight that fact that it's not going to take place of the teaching and learning process. It's going to enhance it, and it's going to get students to a higher critical and analytical thinking process than some of the things that we do right now that are taking a little longer.
Hi, my fellow school leaders and educators. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder at TomoClub. And today in the TomoClub podcast series, we had Superintendent of East Hartford Public Schools, Thomas Anderson. He's a turnaround veteran because I have seen his track record of taking on difficult, underperforming school systems and guiding them to success. He has a local hero now, returning back to his city after being a part of multiple school systems. And plus, recently, East Hartford was also selected by Connecticut Department of Education for an AI pilot program. So there are multiple things going on right now, and it's a very diverse community with 70% of the population are people of color. So I'm pretty looking forward to this discussion on how you guys are thinking about the role of AI in modern education. So welcome to our podcast, Thomas.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I appreciate it.
Perfect. So before we jump in, Thomas, I would love to know what got you excited to work in education in the first place? And is that reason still valid after so many years?
I think I never planned on being an educator. I mean, that was, when we think of, honestly speaking, but when you look at, I started playing sports when I was 9. So you had, coaches that were involved in different things. And some of them at that age, they were teachers. But as you go through, and some of the people who had the biggest impact ended up being coaches and teachers. So when there were other things I had an opportunity to do as far as being part of summer programs. And then when I was in grad school, I did substitute teaching and those type of things before I had ever taken an education class. So I switched when I was there. And, you think of what you can do that brings promise and, more meaning to it. Of course, everyone you're growing up, everyone wants the jobs that supposedly make a lot of money and all those types of things. And you hear individuals who are working in some of those fields and they just talk about, what you do has to be something that you feel that is rewarding. And from a, salary standpoint, you keep doing what you're doing and certain things are going to come, but it can't be the money, money can't be the driver. It has to be being able to do something that you feel good about. It's meaningful, and having the opportunity of coming back to where I grew up, it's a unique opportunity to be, assisting to lead, leading the school system that, I've been in since I was in 4th grade, and my younger brothers were here for their entire educational career. Both of my parents separately still live in town and those type of things. So, it's like, yeah, that is, it's something that it's just a special feeling that you have. Now, the job is still the job. There's still things about it that don't change no matter what. But, when you're able to visit buildings and say, oh, this was my elementary school, now it's an alternative school, or you had this other place over here. And, when you drive around, you get those, those nostalgic feelings. It just gives it a lot of meaning, beyond, the commitment you already have. So
one thing I can definitely say after talking to a lot of school leaders, that they identified their passion pretty early, and that's why they were able to go up the ladder from a school teacher to administrator to a superintendent. So I think that's pretty common that they listen to their calling pretty early, because people do struggle in finding that maybe till 30s and 40s as well. So, but I would love to know, after having a national career, from Chicago to DC to Massachusetts, I know you talked about the nostalgic meaning and the impact meaning, but how has been your experience different working for East Hartford?
being in you can be in other places. So we lived in Maryland for a long time, and my first year of teaching was actually here in East Hartford,
Okay.
and then I went back. I went to grad school in DC, so I went back to Maryland in Montgomery County, which is a huge school system. But you get there as an adult working, being able to come here. I've seen, and plus I'd come home to visit and those type of things, but I've seen the changes from a population standpoint, from an economic in terms of development, what was happening, what didn't happen, what's happening now. And you can put all those things together and you look at, the quality of a school system in terms of, when I went to school, there were people that were graduating that were going to the Ivy schools. They were going to all the different places that you would think of. Well, it's still happening now.
Yeah.
Population has changed a little bit. Some things have shifted. The large, Pratt and Whitney is a huge entity here, and they made some changes over the years, so they have a smaller footprint. But some other organizations have come in, some other companies. So having that opportunity to really be able to see what it was then, what still remains, and some of the challenges that we still face, but then certain things that were overcome, and then just those things that were being done at a high level that continue to be done at a high level.
No, makes sense. I think it's a great decision, and you are making some big changes at this district as well. So I think the streak continues. So now bringing it to the topic of AI. Like how does AI or technology access or workforce readiness play out against the problem right now that's in the school district of not having enough devices as well? You know,
Yeah.
H- how
I think
how are you addressing that challenge? Because one side we're talking about that new technology shift, and the other side we are still struggling with the basic needs. So how are you looking at that?
I look at it as, the first thing, and just because I never use that turnaround word, I always look at it where you have an opportunity to go in, and I think you have to come in with your eyes wide open, and you come in and complement on the processes and the systems that are in place and build on that. So walking into East Hartford, there was already a structure because we're post-COVID now. And in my previous district, when I was in New Bedford, we were responsible for becoming one-to-one and investing in all the devices. So coming into East Hartford, some of that was already done. All the high school students already had their devices. They're able to take them home. We made sure that there were more carts in the elementary schools to be able to access that. So during the school day, and then for the high school students, they're able to take the devices home. So we have that level of access. And then we're thinking about, okay, how do we use, because like you mentioned, we're fortunate. We're one of, I think it was 7 districts in Connecticut who were selected to pilot this past spring some of the AI tools. And the thing is, people were already using them. So students and staff are already using it to a degree. So then it just comes to how do we maximize it and having where people, one, they're not afraid of it, but using it to benefit, using it as a tool from a teacher's perspective, using it as a tool to help generate some lessons. It's not doing their job, and it doesn't mean they're not committed to doing it, because when you input, now we've played with it some, it's a lot to input the information to get something quality out. So the whole thing is there's still a lot of work that has to be done in the front end to be able to create some of those assignments or assessments that may help the teacher in the classroom. The other part of that is with students being able to use it, it's still more about the process, because as a high school English teacher, the paper is the product in the end, and that's what you want students to see, solid rubric, a good example, and those type of things. But AI can help them get to that point. So, for me, it would be you're gonna start off writing the paper in class. You have all of your ideas and your thoughts down. Either when they get home, then if you're using AI, that's fine, but you've already started with all of your own ideas. It's helping you, like you have a built-in writer at home that can help cultivate some of your own words. So I think the biggest thing is, and with that pilot, was one, accessing what we already have, 2, teaching how to use it. And I think that's the next step right now as we open the school year next week, is how are we equipping students with the information and the knowledge to use it to their benefit versus I need to write a paper on, of mice and men. Tell me about Lenny and George, and that's it. Well, that's really not going to help you when it comes time for the details that have to be in there, because you need to know which of those two did what, who was truly the main character, so all of those type of things. And I think that's our responsibility, to keep pushing our students, equipping them with it versus fighting and saying you can't use it. And that's a losing battle at this point, because again, we just need to put the parameters in place, and we've created we call it a position statement, because so much is evolving and when we're learning from it. So when we create the policy that the Board of Education will approve, I'm not going back and forth with, to them to say, okay, we made these changes. So we have something in place that we've already adopted. That's our guiding document. And then we go from there in being able to make any adjustments before we have that official policy.
No, that's great to know that you are already going to be starting with student AI literacy to a certain degree, starting from this coming semester. But did you train the teachers beforehand? Like, did you conduct any professional development using in third party or internally?
Yes. So during the pilot piece of it, we gave access to some of the tools, to some of the companies that we had interviewed with, to see which one we were going to use. And then through our professional development structure that we have, teachers had the opportunity to participate in it, learn more about the programs that they were going to have access to. And the biggest piece is just because, again, a lot of the teachers are already using it. They're already savvy in terms of using the devices. It's not as though we're talking about 30 years ago, or maybe a little bit more at this point, where the use of a computer wasn't, like, people were still learning and they weren't as inclined to be able to do it. So we're so far beyond that. Now it's giving them the access to be able to go in there, give them some guiding points, provide some of those sessions where we can say, hey, here are some things you might want to look at. This is how you get to it. And then providing that time and space for them to go in. I guess the simple word is, go in and play with it.
Yeah.
And figure out, okay, how will this best serve me as a teacher in working with my students on a daily basis? So all that to say, yes, we provided professional development program.
Yeah.
So.
And what tool are you guys starting with?
The one we're using, there's a couple that we have access to, but the one we actually did this opening week is Magic School.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's, and for me, I'm like, look, a lot of them do things. It's just really, what's the one that will have the easiest of ease in being acclimated to it? And also because we have a lot of restrictions from a technology standpoint in terms of firewalls and those things, which is good. So there had to be, the program had to fit into some of the parameters that we already have.
So yeah, would love to know, because other school leaders always are identifying this, or they're navigating this problem statement. So can you explain what were the parameters that made you choose this particular tool?
So the biggest part was having our technology people involved, because I'll be honest, I didn't touch a lot of the other pieces. I'm looking at it from the perspective of, if this is what they're saying they're needing based on the opportunity they've had to see what I'm looking for, what it can do, all of the little things that it can do to help create different, again, like I say, different lessons, different assignments, and those type of things. So that was a key piece. And does it fit into our security restrictions that we already have? And is it something that can be rolled out to all, to the staff, one that were part of the pilot, and then what it offers, what's it going to do in our classroom? Mm-hmm. So, I know we talk about, a lot about writing, and then there's, doing reading inventories, or something where a student can read and the computer is picking it up and can give feedback. So looking at a lot of those different pieces for the different grade levels. So we focused the pilot on the middle school and a little bit of the secondary for the pilot, but also thinking, okay, how do we get it into an elementary? So the program itself has to be something that can be used basically K-12. And so that was a big piece of being able to look at that. And we also use Microsoft. So we have Teams, and there's another component with Microsoft that made it easier because we already had access to it.
No, I agree with you. So how long did the pilot go for? Like, before you guys were confident that this can be a perfect tool for your school district?
So the pilot would have been, it was in the spring. So it started probably, I don't know, February to March, I think, when we first started
Hmm.
getting. So it took a minute because when things come out, you got to figure out, okay, where we're going to put it, who's going to do it. Luckily, there were some things that we're already doing that when our PD committee was already coming together. So we already had a group of people doing some other work that were able to come together to get a sense of, okay, what is this? How can we do it? So that part made the pilot a little bit easy. So now I'll be honest, we're not quite sure because we ended the year, things were positive, but now we're going into the new year where it's going to be a little bit more open.
Right.
That's when we'll get some more of that data to see, okay, was this the right tool? And plus we're going to open up some other tools as well that they'll have access to. So we piloted with the one that I mentioned, I think Magic School, but then there are some others that we'll have access to just because some of them are free. And
Right.
again, it just has to meet the privacy, student, all that stuff.
No, I agree with you. I think that's a beautiful strategy because
Mm-hmm.
right now, if I understand about the entire ecosystem, it's evolving so rapidly that sticking to one product may not be the best strategy. And
Exactly.
you let educators, like you said, play with the product and see what one works the best for them, specifically when they are for free, right? So I think that
Mm-hmm.
if you are smart enough that, and you are able to use it decently well, even the free versions can give you get your work done. So I think
Exactly.
so. Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do. That you're not putting all your eggs in one basket and you are exploring others,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like over 15 days things changes in AI world
Yeah.
right now.
The other part of that is because and I say teachers because we're talking about front facing in the classroom, but teachers and other staff, they're already familiar with many of those tools. The issue, it just comes down to with our IT department because they're really strict about things, which is good, but really seeing, okay, how can we navigate what information is being pulled into those systems. So those are the rules that we had to put in place. Let's say if we're using, because chat GPT, they'll have access to that too. It's just a matter of, okay, you can't put identifiable information in
Right.
about students. And I think most people, and they understand that shouldn't be an issue, but it's still those things that we need to make sure that are clear and when we're opening up for access at the buildings.
Hmm. No, makes sense. So, what do you think are the tasks that can be AI powered, and where does human touch is going to be relevant from the
Yeah.
educator scope of work?
When we think about that, so you're never going to be able to replace the adult facilitating a conversation. For the adult to be motivating and be a little more probing. What we can do is having to come up, I mentioned already, as an English teacher, and so if you're thinking about a book, putting some of the topics in and say, okay, we need to list the main characters, what their character traits were. Like that's an easy thing in terms of you can put that in the computer and it can help you spit it out because one, the teacher knows all that information already. This just saves time having to sit and create it. Now, using that to facilitate the conversation and being able to, build those relationships with students and getting them more connected, we're never going to be able to replace the human component, and nor should we try. But I think again it's like using the tool to be able to get students to one navigate it themselves. So if you're putting something in, and the other part about that is it gets us away from it. An easy question is, okay, name the main characters. Okay, you can name the main characters. You can put that in there and it'll spit out the main characters. It'll even give you some of the character traits. But then you have to be a little bit more sophisticated in our line of questioning to see, okay, well, how did character A and B engage with one another? And what was it? So being a little bit deeper in the level of questioning will help it because with that, you're going to learn about the characters, you'll learn about the setting, you'll learn about the world they were in at that time. So I think it'll be a huge help to staff, to teachers everywhere, because you can put that in there. Students are going in the direction that you want them to, and it's more than just memorization. They actually have to apply what it is that you've been able to pull out of that created document.
No, I 100% agree with that. I think teachers have a lot of role to play, whether they are curators or critics or the designer of experience,
Yep.
ethical guides, relationship builders, mentors. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of things. And I think in a way, the way AI is performing, those are the things were the first reason everyone wanted to be a teacher. So if they're again go back and able to focus more and give more time to what was the initial motivation, I think
Hmm.
that should reinforce their whole reason to work with AI. Um,
Exactly.
Also, I would like to understand that it's also a lot politicized, right? Uh,
Hmm.
so, how do you navigate the fear of parents? Can you give us an example of, how did you make an
Hmm.
parent or a teacher feel comfortable with AI? Any kind of
Yeah.
discussion around that, more specific with an experience, that would be helpful.
When we first started, when we got selected for the pilot, because everyone's been having the conversations, but then it just gave me more reason to be a little bit more pointed about it. So at one of our board meetings early on in the spring, I just gave, a simple overview of what it is and what it isn't. And the what it isn't is that it's not going to take the place of the people in the classroom, take the place of our teachers. Also sharing just kind of a graphic of what AI does and what you still need people to do. And so the difference is when you do a board meeting, you're not going to get all that feedback in terms of, okay, I understand. But if something is not understood, you'll definitely get that feedback. So, you'll definitely have people calling and sharing thoughts and emails if it's something that they don't. So I take that in this situation, I take that as a plus because and I did it a couple times, as we got to the next level, the next stage of it, I did share the position statement. So that kind of helps avoid things. So you get out in front of it and sharing, hey, this is what we're going to use it for. Everyone is, I say everyone because you hear, these are things you hear on TV where we're worrying about students cheating and these type of things. And I'm like, okay, let's not think of it like that. Give them the assignments. We control what they're doing in the classroom. We can control how much access they have. So come up with assignments where they still are required to demonstrate their thinking. So it's not being used as a crutch, it's being used as a tool to get ahead. And so putting that information out sooner and making sure that we kind of built on that as part of the process really helped to avoid even staff thinking that, oh, well, students are going to have too much access. And I know there were some of those questions, but again, like I said, with the committee work that was done and through that pilot, it really gave the opportunity to head some of that off with answers, with
Hmm.
clear answers in the beginning. And
Yeah.
again, focusing on it being a tool versus a way for someone to not have to do the work that they're supposed to.
No, I agree with you. I think a lot of those hesitation will be
Hmm.
solved only by doing it, and
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
any amount of word, any amount of discussion will not always be enough. So I think
Hmm.
yeah, pilot works the best. Any concern from the parent that you have to address?
No, I think again the other part of that is letting them know, hey, these are jobs in the future. Someone's going to have to be the programmer of
Hmm.
AI.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be able to pull all the information itself. Someone's going to have to be able to check it. And so again, the level of exposure and explaining those type of things to say you can't depend on it 100%. You still have to use some other I want to say reputable, resources to double check the information that you're getting. So parents, that's what they want to hear. They want to make sure that their child is learning, or they can't just type everything in. It's not like a calculator. You're going to type the numbers, it's going to give you the answers. This requires a little bit more thinking, as we know, and making sure we continue to highlight that fact that it's not going to take place of the teaching and learning process. It's going to enhance it, and it's going to get students to a higher critical and analytical thinking process than some of the things that we do right now that are taking a little longer.
No, absolutely. I'm glad no concerns have come because other school leaders have heard those kind of issues where
Mm-hmm.
parents are coming up and asking like, should I buy an AI tutor for my child at home
Okay.
for additional support, or my
Yeah.
child is using AI for companionship? He has a virtual girlfriend now, or virtual boyfriend
Mm-hmm.
now, or they're using it for mental health support, or
Yeah.
they have deciding their career depending on it. So there are things that's coming back to the school. So I think
Yep.
what help is that this professional development that you guys are doing, it kind of put teachers ahead of the problem. So before it
Yeah.
actually comes up, they know about it, and they can address the parent concern. I'm glad it hasn't come yet, but I think be cautious. They're gonna be around the corner.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of that too is you have to balance the time on devices. When you walk
Mm,
into a classroom, we can't have it where they're sitting in the classroom and everybody has their laptop open and everyone's doing it. I said, well, where's the level of engagement that we need? I mean,
yeah.
they'll have time to work on that at home sometimes, but when you're in that room, we still need to section it off where you're not spending the bulk of the time in class with your head in your laptop, because then that to me that still defeats the purpose of the human engagement, the overall teaching and learning process.
Mm.
We need individuals to connect with one another, to collaborate and do all of those type of things. You can have that dialogue versus sitting in front of the computer and just typing the information in.
No, I agree with you. There has to be a definite balance. Um, Also, I would love to understand. It might be early to ask this question, but
Mhm.
is there any school operation or any teacher's scope of work where you can explain us before and after AI changed the workflow? AI actually moved things. So, have you seen any of those major change where AI is much more prevalent, much more obvious now?
Honestly, not yet, not
Hmm.
yet. But like I said, we as I think of those subjects that require a lot of writing, and thinking of an English class or social studies. I mean, I know we do it in math, but when you think about all those other areas, that would be something where I'm thinking the amount of time it might take a teacher to create a overall lesson.
Yeah.
I'm thinking now that once we've implemented AI and they're practicing with it and you're using it, the discussions we had were that creating that lesson will take a little less time and being able to spend more time implementing it and providing feedback for students. So that's a key area. That the before is, it's taking 30 minutes to an hour versus, you know, 10 to 15 minutes when you put it in there. So we'll see how that part goes.
You did mention about the compliance fact. And again, that's one of the key concerns of a lot of educators, a lot of school leaders before implementing any new program. I just want to understand hypothetically, if there is
Mhm,
a data breach or if there is a
mhm.
concern that pops up, what would be your playbook? Like, what would be your policy of, and how would you communicate to family, friends? Like, have you guys created any kind of a fallback mechanism?
So I think most districts end up going through something. So we've gone through a
Oh,
couple of things, even just the recent issue with, I won't mention the name, but one of the companies where they had a data breach where that comes, then it comes to the school. So we communicate with staff, we share whatever we need to with parents who need to assess how much information, or not, sometimes not about how much, but what type of information, no matter the volume that was shared or could potentially be shared. And again, the IT department, in terms of its constant security checking in that anyway. So we have a good team. So I'm not really concerned that something would slip through. The challenge is always making sure we're not clicking the wrong links that come
yeah,
through. And so
absolutely.
that's why we end up having so much IT security on it, and being very strategic about the windows of which programs are open. So
Hmm.
I can say it that way. But like I said, it's a 24/7 constant review of, those systems checking everything that comes through.
Is there an insurance policy in place? Like, you guys can claim some damage control? Like, do you guys have anything like that?
Yeah. Yes. So with all of the, you know, how to put it. My tech people are saying, there's certain things you can't talk about. So when
Of
it
course.
comes, yeah, exactly, yeah, because we don't share the steps that are taken and those type of things. But there is insurance, and there are a lot of safety measures in place, and a lot of things that are in place to, once something happens, obviously you didn't prevent it, but you can catch it and stop it from spreading.
Right.
And so a lot of the mechanisms that are in place are that they're able to do that.
No, I'm glad to hear that. Honestly, these are the lot of questions a lot of school leaders have. So I think because you
Hmm.
guys have
Hmm.
done a pilot and now you have done putting it rolling out for the entire school district, I think you're holding one of those key positions where having those clarity is very
Hmm.
precious. Um, I also want to understand like budget issues. Like literally every school
Hmm.
district, every school leader is struggling with the financial planning, more or less. How's had been your case? And why I'm bringing it up right now is because the implementation of AI is also kind of being fueled with the reasoning that staffing has been a problem. So we expect the same educators to be more efficient, and they have to pick up more tasks. So AI can be a great tool in that. So I've seen that kind of
Mhm.
motivation uh, being talked around. So
Yeah.
just want to understand from the budgetary point of view, how are things at your end right now?
To me, it's always budget time. We're always evaluating, we're always right sizing and seeing how we can be more efficient. And honestly, I didn't think of that we would use or implement AI to replace staff. So from a
Yeah,
budget
of course.
standpoint, to say, okay, we can use less staff. It's how do we have a stronger teaching and learning process? How do
Mm,
we make those type of things more efficient where teachers are not having to spend time on some, more, we say more menial tasks that we know they know how to do it. It's just some things they just take a little bit longer. So that's more so what it's about. And the AI level of investment, it was great having the opportunity to pilot because there was some grant funding that came along with it, but
mhm,
we already had access to some other tools that were already embedded in some of the softwares that we were using. Now you just do something a little bit different than maybe a cost, but you divert it. So it doesn't mean we needed more money to the budget. It's if this is going to do something more for us and it's more efficient, then we stop doing and paying for something else.
mm,
And budget is always, it's always, how to put it, it's always a key discussion because it's not always an issue. It's a key discussion all the time, but it can't always be the reason where we're saying, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that. It's really every year we should be tightening up to see what more we can do. Not about giving more jobs to people, but it's about what more can we maximize. If we've done two or three things and now, not to say we've mastered it, but we've done that. And we'll say, okay, now we need to get to the next stage. So why are we still paying for steps 1, 2, 3 when now we're on 4? Don't
mm,
pay for 1, 2, 3. Only pay for 4s as we can get. And I think sometimes we start doing things and we forget that we're actually taking care of those previous costs that we don't need to cover anymore because we've kind of outgrown that. Now we replace that cost with a new cost, and it's not an additional. So I share that because that is something in my role, and even when I was a principal, those are things that we look at. How can we be more efficient? How can we equip staff at all levels to be able to do things that's not taking them any more time, and it actually uses a little bit less of their energy, and they can focus on some of the other areas so we can continue to get ahead.
no, I'm pretty impressed because I asked this question in multiple different ways, but
Hmm.
I love the way your commitment about the staff, not from the replacement, but from efficient point of view, is
Hmm.
solid and consistent.
Yeah.
So absolutely love that. Um, Also, the one thing that always been talked about AI is um, from the diversity point of view, that we also those saw those examples that if you just put a
Yeah.
finance guy, it pops up a white guy. If you ask about uh, a happy family, it has those kind of issues with
Yeah.
the racial point of view.
Yeah.
Apart from that, during the pilot or after the pilot, has you guys seen any uh, lack of diversity issues coming with AI usage? Because apart from these examples.
I'm not saying they're not there. We haven't, nothing was highlighted
Mm,
at this time that those type of issues still exist. I think a lot of those companies really recognized in their space that they needed to make sure there was more representation throughout, and it just wasn't a narrow focus or a narrow scope of who they were putting in and what these images look like. So I think they've done a better job, which means that
mm,
it hasn't been an issue for us. And it's not like we're looking for it. Hopefully it's
yeah.
not going to be an issue. Hopefully when students are putting information in, things are popping up and there's
Mm,
representation of everyone, and as it should be, because the world that we're in, then especially the community that is here, it is a very diverse population of people. It's always been that way. It's shifted a little bit, but you've always had a variance of different languages, different people, cultures, backgrounds, and economics. I mean, so much more of what drives things these days it's more about economics first, because you'll get people that come together to fight over money. So when it comes to the other things, it still fits in there, but it's really the economic situation. And one thing I mentioned, as we're continuing to prepare students and being able to do things, using this as how are our students cultivating their own social capital.
Hmm.
So we can think about the use of AI and the tools to be able to use it, but some students don't really need AI because maybe one of their parents is a professional writer. Maybe one of their parents is, professional writer slash author, professor type person. They have somebody who's already editing their work. So then you have other students where they don't have that access at home. Now they have AI.
Yeah.
That helps to bring a lot of balance to who's helping to critique your work and give you some, constructive criticism and feedback in there. So I think when we talk about, the diversity as a whole in terms of positions, economics, the people, so all of those things have to be considered.
No, absolutely. I think this is the first time the learning gaps can actually be filled up in a much more realistic manner. Because I heard a few examples where students, let's say in a sixth grader, is being taught, let's say, polynomials. They have problems with the basic math, which they could not feel comfortable asking. So if they have a grade 3 gap, the AI can help address it in a much more safer environment than anything. And I think um, if we leave those topics, I think those topics are not existing anymore. But if you look at the positive edge, I think it is gonna fill up the equity gap, the achievement gaps, the learning gaps much better, much accelerated right now than anything. So yeah, I'm full on optimistic about it, and I've been hearing good stories.
Well, and it's so much about access.
Hmm.
And if someone has access to a tutor or to this and that, and another person doesn't, one's going to get ahead, one may grow a little bit slowly if they're already behind. And so when we think about the use of technology and AI, because it can't happen, there's not enough time in a school day. And the other part is we're talking about people. There's only so much you can learn mentally that you're going to be able to focus on in one day. And so being able to spread it out and equip the students with those, those other tools to be able to, have ownership of their own learning, and they're at home and it can take a few minutes. So you have all those pieces in there.
No, absolutely. And I think it's fueling people interest deeper. So let's say if I have an interest in music, I can get started. If I have an interest in art, I can get started. I think that inhibition is going down, and it's up to us as an educator, as a school leaders, how we guiding them in the right direction than anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that. Now, I did ask you overall about AI. Now I want to understand very interesting thing that I wanted to start in the beginning, but I missed it. But you did secure an engineering pathway certification at East Hartford, and even got few kids paid internship at Pratt and Whitney. So I think that's a massive win. A lot of school leaders trying to fill this gap. Please, can you walk us through your first meeting with the employer, and what were their biggest concern? How did you overcome that? How did this partnership actually become a reality?
So the benefit I had was that the partnership already existed when I got here. So I didn't have to start from scratch with Pratt and Whitney to be able to do that. But knowing the process and kind of, then stepping into it, because the objective is, okay, now we need to strengthen it. So some of the challenges are, when you're dealing with high school students, the level of responsibility, are they equipped to do some of the tasks that they're going to be expected to do at that high level? So really what it was to continue those discussions, having it where the students are, they apply. So they're selected. The Pratt and Whitney staff, they're the ones that actually select the students. So they run through whatever their expectations are, or whatever the, I'll say, a series of tasks and those type of things that they want to see students be able to do. What we have to do, especially in my role, is to make sure we're continuing to equip the school with the time. They have their bell schedules, but just saying with the time and the space and the freedom and flexibility to be able to prepare students to understand this is what is needed in the workforce. It's about what your skills are, whether your literacy skills and your math computational skills. But again, are you a team player? Emphasizing that. Can you take direction from someone else? Are you coachable? can you articulate when you do have a level of confusion and you know how to ask about that? So those are the areas that would have been, and that's the case with any of the other organizations that we work with in terms of even some of the brand new partnerships that, yes, that I was part of and bringing it, but those are the same questions. It's always about, it's a high school student. There are some things that they haven't learned yet.
Yeah.
And I think just making sure we balance what the expectation is, but also making sure the organization knows that this student this is a 16, 17-year-old person. So they haven't had a job yet. So these are the things that they're learning. So I think it's been a good, a good balance, give and take. But I think the students that have gone over who earned those, they earned those internships. They are truly representing at a high level, and they've just made it, I'm not going to say they've made it easier. They've made it more clear for the next group of students to come through. They've given, now the students will get the benefit of the doubt because they're thinking, okay, these students are coming from East Hartford. This is a job they're doing. We know those students are there. Of our, almost of our 2,000 total high school students, yes, we have many more than 7, but those that applied are there. So no, but it's been a good opportunity to continue to grow that relationship and then build some other ones with some smaller companies.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think I had an overall great discussion on AI and your implementation right now. And this question might be a little too early to ask, but we can ask this later again in the future. Again,
Okay.
that have you guys thought about any key performance indicators? Any kind of metrics that you want to track for proving the success of these new tools that you're using, or something like that? Have you guys tried to bring some analytical metric or data to it?
So when we think about our overall strategic plan, and we have these action statements called process benchmarks and making statements. So part of, as we revised and created a new one for this year and embedding some of the things about AI in there and coming up with, okay, how do we measure it? Is it going to be anecdotal? Is it numerical? So we're still trying to determine what's the need to measure? So that part too is like, what exactly are we looking for in the beginning? Is it just access and are students actually using it? Because we know that that's going to be true. They're accessing it and they're going to be using it because they're already doing it. So the next piece is determining, and this will have to come from the classroom. So you have to pull teachers in to see, okay, from a numerical piece, if you have 10 students and 10 of them are using it, what's the range of grades? I guess we could say, the easy thing about, okay, what does a grade look like? How are we assessing how well the student did? And was it because AI supported, to what level and to what degree? So those are the challenges of really trying to determine what's the true impact of AI on a particular or specific assignment versus student having access and you're not quite sure, how much they did use it. So we're not quite there yet.
No, I agree. That I was worried. I was like little aware about it, but yeah, I think it's worth asking.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Perfect. So yeah, that's an overall things that I want to ask. I'm just too curious about right now how it's shaping up. Anything that you want to share that I haven't asked, or something that might be relevant for other school leaders to know about AI implementation?
I think the biggest thing is going into it with an open mind, and the colleagues that I've spoken to, and some of the early stages. I happened to be at a meeting in Atlanta that had a lot of other superintendents. Not like a small enough group where you could connect, but from different parts. And that was the biggest thing, is making sure that communities are understanding what our purpose for AI is, and again, explaining how it's going to be a tool versus some asset a student has to escape doing work. And I'm thinking, let's flip it and look at it differently. And it's the same as when we talk about cell phones in schools. It's like, you're going to fight it always, figure out how to use it as a tool. And I think that's the same thing, as we're talking about technology itself. And that was the biggest piece I pulled away from, from my colleagues in other places, in terms of, how we introduce it, how it's implemented, and what's the real purpose of having it. When you're explaining to parents, hey, there are jobs, always there's a point to say, well, these jobs, we don't know what they are. They haven't been created yet, but we definitely know that there has to be people inputting the information and checking what's being put in for AI. So That's what we're going to go with.
No, absolutely. Perfect. No, thank you so much, Thomas, for this time. I absolutely love
Yeah,
it.
and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will find a lot of value out of this. Thank you so much.